It's the Brad and John Show.
Brad and John Show. Today's date is July 21st. This is the C block, the Charlie block, which means we started right around 7:40. It's 7:45. I'm way behind schedule. I'm sorry, John. John.
Hey, Brad, I pray both legally and religiously, just to let you know.
You've read it already.
Read what, Brad? I was just ruminating on how I like to pray.
Do you like that? Do you like that term? Do you like that phrase?
I do like that. It's very Brad Hildebrand.
Because
that is the man, pardon the expression, but that is the man I love right there.
Because of the fact that if you read, and it's funny, every once in a while, someone will say, I heard someone say in a legal brief they're coming for their conclusion, they pray. That's a legal
we
term.
Pray for relief. We pray for relief.
Exactly. And I'm not making that up, am I, John? That's a real legal term, correct?
It is, yeah.
Yes.
We pray for relief or we pray for judgment, yeah.
So I put in my pleading, I pray, and what I put parenthetically, both religiously and legally.
Now, I got you off track with my nonsense, Brad. Where were you going?
With what? with
the intro to C block.
Oh, the intro to C block. Okay. Can I bring up something here? Okay, and seriously, being serious for a moment. Okay, I want to talk about the floods in Texas, and a couple things have come out which I think is very interesting, and I'll use a perfect example. John, this is the 21st of July. What happened this morning between midnight and 5 o'clock? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. Is it like a lunar thing?
No. Did it rain at your place?
I don't have any idea.
Did it rain at your place?
Oh, yeah. It was torrential storms.
Okay. There were several watches and warnings issued by NOAA, the National, the Weather Bureau, whatever you want to call them, the National Weather Service out in Weldon Spring. Okay? And nobody paid attention to them in the St. Louis area, right? I mean, nobody did. Do you live in an area that would possibly flood, or you live high?
I live pretty high up, but there's a road nearby that floods. To answer your question, Brad, I had no idea that there was a flood warning, and I look at weather multiple times a day.
Flash flood warnings, flash flood watching, all cards starts at different things like that. Okay, the interesting part of this was, and remember the pitch that the Democrats were using when they were trying to not get NPR and PBS, specifically NPR, defunded. Okay. They said that it's a vital source of information for people, especially in the rural parts of the country. Correct? Remember they talked about this?
because there's no other way for those folks to get any information other than NPR.
Right. There's no other way. I read an article, and I thought this was interesting. Two things. We never even talked about this on July 4th because we weren't here, but we didn't talk about it on the 3rd. We didn't talk about it on the day after, which would have been the 7th, I think, because the 4th was a Friday, 5th, 6th, 7th. Monday, we came back on Monday. Remember we talked about the fact months ago, and you and I sort of laughed about it, that the Post-Dispatch was not going to do anything on July 4th because their people needed a day off. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay. If you look at stlpr.org, and you follow that, how many articles do appear on that website over the weekend?
0.0.
Well,
now, Brad, I put an asterisk there because I did notice I go every day, right? I go on Saturday, I go on Sunday, and Sunday and Monday are generally very slow. Somebody did put something together for the Savannah Bananas visit.
I saw that.
But it's a name that I didn't recognize. So I don't know if that was just a photographer. I said just a photographer. I don't know if that was a photojournalist without text or what it was. But other than that, they're obviously not going to work on a weekend because we all know, Brad, news takes a break for the weekend. And criminals and major events, they never happen between Friday at 5 and Monday at 8.
My point was, and this is something I've read with two different sources, the national public radio station that covers that area down there where the flood was in the hill country of Texas did not post anything until 18 hours after the flood.
But Brad, I thought they were the only source of information. I thought that people in rural areas relied on public radio for up-to-date news.
18 hours after the flood. Now, keep in mind, the local TV stations, the local radio stations were on top of this within hours of this happening. Some of them were in the area by 7, 8, 9 o'clock that morning, okay? and some of them were right behind the first responders. But guess who wasn't there, John?
Public radio.
Right. So, see, the crazy thing about this is, I want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse. Come here, Nellie. Let me beat you again. She's laying back in the studio. She's got a little life in her, so she's not a dead horse yet. She's a nearly dead horse, okay? The sad part of this is you give me 29, I ran a news operation. I started a news operation here in St. Louis back in 1991, 1992.
It was News Plus, right?
News Plus. I ran a news organization. One point in time, we had, I think, 12 or 13 different stations take our stuff. We actually broke stories. I can tell you an interesting story about one of my reporters, Scott Simon, who did an incredible investigative report on a very high-profile murder at the time, and he happened to be at a person's house who was accused of, this was the family of the accused murderer, and he was interviewing the family when one of the family victims showed up at the house, and there was a throwdown in the front yard, and he obviously, this is back in the 90s, he didn't have a smartphone, but he did have his audio recorder, and there was one time when we had this audio. We were the only organization in town that had the audio, and at one point in time, we had the Channel 2, the Channel 4, and the Channel 5 van in our parking lot at our station. We were playing this audio, and they were microwaving the audio back to the TV stations so they could use this part of their report. Okay? I say that proudly because we broke news and stuff like that. You don't see that, and we had a staff of, 5, 6 people. Tori Lyons was my news director. She's still working. She's doing traffic over at iHeart. You can hear her sometimes you hear her on Patriot and some of the other stations. I had Scott Simon, who's probably one of the best investigative reporters, who got totally burnt out in the business, is now running a storage facility out in St. Charles. I had Candace Coleman, who ended up working at a couple TV stations. I had another young lady, I can't remember her name anymore, who ended up working at TV stations all over the country. I gave these people their first jobs in journalism, and they did a bang-up job. We had a staff of 5, maybe 6 people, okay? St. Louis Public Radio has 29 people on their website. If each one of them put one story on the website every day, they'd have 29 different stories every day. John, how many stories do you think St. Louis Public Radio cleared over the weekend on the website? How many stories?
But I would say probably one, the Savannah Banana story.
And they have absolutely, positively no local news on the weekend. Zero, zip, none. If you listen to KWMU, I do. I listen quite a bit, probably too much, and I listen quite a bit on Saturday. And I can tell you, every weekend, there's never, ever, ever, ever any local news. Never. I mean, the arch could fall into the ground, and you'd hear about it on Monday morning and all things considered, we'll talk about the arch falling into the grounds. And it wouldn't even be the local people, it'd be the NPR people. We were reached out to our affiliate, KWMU, and they had the weekend off. So instead, we put one of our reporters on a private plane that Al Gore personally endorsed because it had zero emissions, and we couldn't figure out how he could get a zero-emission private plane. But we sent a private plane to St. Louis, and it landed at Bi-State Parks Airport, and the reporter got sidetracked in Sauget on the way to downtown. But after 20 hours in Sauget, he finally got to downtown and realized the arch was in the river. That would be the NPR story, John. What do you think?
Now, Brad, in defense of management, imagine you brought in a brand new manager who didn't know anybody, and it was day one, and he said, hey, out of X number of people that work here, we're going to need 2 of you every weekend to be on call for news or to report news. One of you will do Saturday, one of you will do Sunday. During that week leading up to your weekend shift, you don't have to work one of the weekdays. Can you imagine the pushback from the newsroom if you suggested that they might occasionally have to work on a Saturday or Sunday?
Well, they're union, so they'd file a protest with their shop steward.
Yeah, and so that complicates it. But even before they form the Lollipop Guild or whatever kind of thing that they have there. And let's put Rosenbaum aside, because if the Democrats' Truman dinner in September is on, let's say, a Saturday, I don't know if it is or not, like Rosenbaum will be there. He covers stuff, big political stuff on the weekend. So let's put Jason aside. But imagine telling anybody else at St. Louis Public Radio that they needed to work on a weekend.
I have a friend of mine. I actually have a couple friends that are nurses, and they're getting ready to retire. They've done it for a long time. And they have told me that some of the young nurses complain about the fact that they have to work nights and weekends. Now, as if you went to that would be like saying, okay, I want to be a police officer, but I only want to work
a firefighter.
I only want to work days. I only want to work Monday through Friday. I only want to work the day shift Monday through Friday. Wouldn't you kindly take them aside and say, let me give you a little mentoring here. Firefighters and police officers and nurses and doctors and EMTs and those kind of people, they work around the clock. And especially as a newbie, you're going to probably get the crap shifts. You're going to get
you're going to pay you're going to have to pay your dues.
You're going to pay your dues. You're going to be working, and a lot of the nurses around here in the St. Louis area hospitals are working 12s. So you're going to work 7P to 7A, and you're going to work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Okay, and you're going to get Tuesday and Wednesday off. That's going to be your work schedule. Oh, I never signed up for that. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to be a creator. I'm going to create content. That way I can do whatever I want when I want. You know what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, well, if they're nurses, they'll probably just go in overnight and do TikTok dances, don't you think?
I've seen some of those, by the way.
I mean, let's face it. The nurse industry does attract some good-looking women.
Well,
a percentage, right?
The crazy thing about it is, I read an article over the weekend, and let's touch on the story we talked on Friday, which I got a tremendous response for. The Scott McFarland thing, where he was at the Butler assassination attempt of Trump, and he made it all about himself and when I read this, you didn't believe it when I read it on your. You thought I was kidding, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I couldn't believe that he actually said that.
He claimed that after Trump was shot, he looked at the crowd, and the crowd looked at him because he was a journalist, and the crowd was out to get him. And he talked about the fact that within 48 hours, he was diagnosed with PTSD, and he got a medical leave from CBS for PTSD. Okay, there is a current popular play on Broadway that chronicles the life of Edward R. Murrow. Are you familiar with this? It's called Good Night and Good Luck. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, you've explained it to me a few times on the air.
Right. Okay. If you read the history of Edward R. Murrow, and if you remember 60s and 70s, early 80s television, there were a group of veteran TV journalists who used to work for Edward R. Murrow and who were combat reporters during World War II. And one of the interesting reporters was, remember on 60 Minutes, they had Andy Rooney used to do that segment at the end of 60 Minutes. Remember? Andy Rooney.
He was a funny guy, yeah.
Right. Do you know what his job was do you know where he was on June 6, 1944?
No, I don't.
He was storming the beach on D-Day as a combat reporter. I don't believe he was I don't think he was actually in the Army because they had what they call the Signal Corps, which is the guys doing the motion pictures and the stills. I believe he was actually working for CBS at the time. He was storming the beach at Normandy on D-Day, 1944, reporting back to the United States. And back then, it was literally they type it and then, I don't know, they sent it by carrier pigeon or something. I don't know how it got back to the United States. And this dude is at the rally saying, I saw Trump almost get killed, but it's all about me because those Republicans are going to come and get me. I'm thinking to myself, what has happened to our society? What has happened? The greatest generation. And the interesting thing was, I read this list of names, and being an old guy, I recognized 2/3 of them as by being very high profile. Eric Sevareid. I mean, that's the name that goes back. When Andy Rooney.
I remember him. Yeah, Eric Sevareid's a famous guy.
These were all World War II combat reporters that worked for the various news organizations for CBS, and that's what Edward R. Murrow did. He was famed for his World War II reporting. Do you think that Scott McFarland, for a split second, could dispatch into combat zone without him pooping his pants? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely not. And I know a guy that actually went down to a campus near Vianney, and he met with this guy. We won't say his name, but his initials are GD, and it doesn't stand for gosh darn. And I was talking to my friend, and he's like, you wouldn't believe. I looked at them, and they looked at me. And they said, we're never going to dial a prayer for you. And then they chased me out of there. And then I'm like, Brad, why does it have to be about you?
John.
And then I said, you're out of your GD mind. That's what I told him, Brad. And then he perjured himself in a letter to me from his law firm. But it was a completely different story.
John, we have to go, but in my latest pleading, did you realize that I chronicled how the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has broken several FCC rules and regulations? Did you get that?
No, I skipped to the end because I wanted to see legally and literally. I wanted to see legally and religiously. So I did skip the meat of the story, Brad.
Read it where I have nailed them on violating FCC rules and regulations, which they have admitted to in their previous pleadings. This is our religious organizations. And keep in mind, when you're donating money to KFUO, $500 an hour is going to that attorney in D.C. who I'm fighting. And instead of you paying for nice Christian organ music on KFUO, you're paying for some fancy schmancy attorney lady in D.C. who's probably driving around her BMW, probably at Starbucks right now, getting her Schnoopy, Schnock-a-Locky, whatever the hell it is.
Brad, you're stereotyping. And when you go to Schnucks today and you pay a little more for your food, I hope you also pick up a crown of thorns.
Bye, John.
See you tomorrow.